When I get nearer to finishing a project, my brain always starts to wander on to the next one. So I have to play a game with myself that says, work a little bit on the new thing and then come back to the old thing. But usually I have to do the old thing first and treat the new as the reward. So this is my helping hand sculpture. You can see it's not finished yet. And then I have this piece of granite. And so I had an idea this morning, just doing a simple contrapposto with the hips going down this way and then the rib cage going up. That's as simple as the idea gets. And then kind of drew the figure. I was thinking of having her pulling off a top over her head, but then I realized later I want to do something large. So I have the hips. But Vasily Fedoruk, my friend and mentor, always told me, work one line, get one line the way you want it, and then work on everything else to support that line being the image. So again, I have the contrapposto, this changing angles of the hip bones, meaning that's from one like doorknob catcher to the other, and this is from one breast to the other kind of thing. So it's going this way and that way, so I get a little dynamic energy when I do that. And of course that crimps this side, and I want to have some interesting shapes going on here. There'll be a little there for her waist, come out for the roundness of the hip, and then this, you don't know if you can see the pencil lining, but I've drawn, it's going to have some subtle changes of the curve, because this really should be a nice simple line, and this can be a little bit more involved over here, and that gives a place the eye to rest and some contrast. But now what I want to do is now I want to come over here, because I've got the basic line down, so now I want to come over, look at the bird's eye view. And now I can figure out, all right, I want to put a twist in the torso. How much room do I have? So if this being the back, I mean, I can come up here and start to do something with the angle here. But I have to make sure that I've got enough to make a round torso, right? So that's what I'm going to be working on. Hope I'm aiming this right because I can't really see. So that'll be the next step. I'll come down in here and draw the anatomy as if I'm looking right down onto it as a bird would. This is Kelly Borsheim at Borsheimarts.com. I appreciate your watching and following along. Please share, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Ciao, ciao. Good morning. Can you hear the bird singing? So it's going to rain today. Look at my studio mates here. Yoda's the black dog, and Ettore is the cat. Oh, nice. Anyway, so we'll start. What I decided was, because it's a high risk of rain today, I don't want to pull out all of my tools and work here. So look at this. Isn't this gorgeous? A little side thing. Okay. So what I decided today is I'm going to work on my little granite piece that I started the other day as my reward for actually doing the finishing touches on Helping Hands stone carving. And so anyway, it's embarrassing for me to admit this, but I don't see in 3 dimensions as I wish that I had. I don't see in volume. And I find that a little bit annoying because this is who I am. But anyway, I've learned to accept that who I am. But my maestro, Vasily Fedoruk, was fantastic. He would come in, draw his line from this side, and then cut away everything. And then he would go into this side, draw his figure from that side, and cut away everything. I don't have that ability to see things in movement just yet. So, oops, I'd turned that video funny, didn't I? Okay, so I started the other day with just my lines. I wanted this profile line here, okay? And now what I'm going to do is, I want the hips shaped facing one direction and the torso to face another direction. I'm also envisioning that right above the nipple and on the breast, I want to have a piece of fabric as if she's pulling off a shirt, but not necessarily including all of the arms and things. So, what I've decided to do is prop up my rock. I don't know if you can see that. So I used some of the pieces of granite that I cut off from my table to, anyway, so I'm propping this at a direction so that when I come straight above it, what I want to do is get the hips figured out. So, okay, so this is the top section of the body. Here's the waist. I want the waist a little higher on this side because I've got her reaching. So her waist is going to go from here, and it'll be a slight reach, okay? So I cut it a little too low when I did this the other day, but it's not going to be, oh great, I love humidity really messing up with my pencil. So I need to stop this video so I can sharpen the pencil again, otherwise I won't be able to draw. Yoda, what's he doing? Etere. The little brothers. Alright, because I know we don't want to watch dogs and cats all day. Stop distracting me from my work, Etere. Alright. So, I want to start to draw from this particular side the hips, because I think for me always once I get the hips in line, then I can put the torso, the rib cage in with the hips, and it works together. And after that you put arms and limbs and heads and all that kind of stuff. At least that works for my brain to focus that way. So I turn the piece here. You can see the thickness of the rock, because this is a problem. I don't really have room for a bum to be totally round, so things will be a little bit compressed, but I still want to make them shapely. So I'm just going to start here with the profiles again and then worry about rounding them. So again, I said I wanted to have the arm reaching up because I want a diagonal here for the breast. I think that's more interesting to have it as though one arm is reaching higher than the other. So this means this is going to come up higher here, and the waist will be down. Okay, so what I thought to do is try to start making this look like a hip. Okay, it seems like there's not a lot to take off on there, but really it's a lot here. So what I want is to know, all right, how tall is the hip, and then how tall is the top? Because the funny thing is, I started out with an idea of more happening at the top, and realized later that if I did that, I drew everything too large, because this is another problem I have, is that I like to do things larger than my concept. So anyway, I just keep wanting to make big things. But so making small is difficult. And again, if you get your proportion off on a small sculpture, it's way more noticeable than when you make a little mistake on a big one, obviously. So anyhow, I've got the dynamic here. I had the hips going this way. So I'm going to decide, okay, maybe here's the separation of the legs. So this leg can come over in front here. Do you see that it's not rounded, but I've got material to make the leg come in the front here. This other leg has to be in the back. So visually though, I need to have that sort of centered. Now I'm not going to cut the separation of the legs just yet, because again, it's a commitment. But basically this leg is going to come in front. Remember, I've got rounded leg muscles here. I want to always keep in the roundness. It's easier to straighten something out, but it's really hard to get the fun rock and roll back into something if it's too straight, or in this case boring. Okay, so the abdomen muscles is going to come here, come down. Let's say that's the pubic bone. Abdomen muscles are going to come down. The rectus abdominis is going to come right down here, and it's going to go all the way up. So, because you've got, even though I'm really, really wanting to simplify the form here, because this granite has, you see the busy patterns, I don't want to make a lot of detail in something like that. Also, it's, when you have something like this, it's really lovely to have a simple shape that you can touch and just treat it sort of like a worry stone, actually, I think. But, so I want to make a simple shape. However, I want to, I don't want to make just a blob. I want it to be a shape with intention and with is something. So I'm going to continue to consider the anatomy. So here I have my abdominal muscle. There'll be a separation, and then you get the other side planes and stuff. Okay, so I'm going to start developing this as I cut. Now, the pubic bone is higher than where the butt cheeks go in the back, okay? If you've ever, if you're a girl, stand with your legs apart in the mirror and try to look down at that eye level with that if possible, or whatever, take a picture of it, whatever. But in general, if you see a picture of a woman's standing spread eagle, you can actually see the bum behind the front part here where the legs separate. So I want to kind of keep that idea there for how long the bum is. It may make the butt too long, but I think with a longer waist, One of the things is I have a short torso, so I tend to carve short torsos, and that's okay because each of us have our own voice, and that, you know, in the end, that turns out to be a beautiful thing, I think. So, okay, so anyway, I'm going to put this in, and I'm going to start carving to make this. I still want to keep this profile here. I never want to lose this line. So when I come over here and I see I started to carve into this, but I want to keep this round and this round. I want to keep this relationship of the belly and then the roundness of the bum at the base, okay? So that's going to be a consideration for me. And I don't know how this is going to go exactly, but I want to start rounding this out from here as if I'm looking at the front of her body. But I'll probably start with this edge. And then with this, let me see if I can show you. I turned. Also, it's important to support the rock with sandbags and stuff when you carve, because the last thing you want using a diamond blade that's extremely dangerous, the last thing that you want is to have this thing fly out of hand and you either damage the sculpture or you send some stuff flying, including a diamond blade, and you hurt yourself. Because as they say at the Marble Symposium in Marble, Colorado, if it can cut stone, it can cut bone. And you need to be aware of that. So anyway, I don't know if you can see it here, but I carved the oval because the rib cage is an egg shape. What I'm doing now is I'm drawing the widest part of the egg shape, because as we come up towards the neck, of course, it's going to taper in. But I'm drawing the oval in the direction. So now I can say, well, I want the body to go this way, and then here. So this is the spine, and this is the sternum. Okay, and then these are the sides that are actually closer down to your the middle of your upper arm area. So anyway, and then once I've got this oval figured out here, and I say, okay, well now the breasts are going to come from the sternum. They're going to come off in this direction. Okay, now it looks like that's not a very big breast, but considering that this is going to be a tapering cylinder, the breast is probably actually going to come like this. And frankly, I kind of don't care if they're super big breasts, because I'm not a guy. No, I'm just saying, teasing with that. But no, I do want a feminine shape. But what I mean is that from the bird's eye point of view, I can get the two breasts here, you see? Now remember that breasts, if you put in the center point of the thorax, the rib cage, put your center point, they go out here in a 90 degree. This angle here is a right angle. Okay, now again, we're talking ideal shapes that just help you figure out, you know, what to do with your anatomy. So I've got my eclipse figured out. The center point of my spine is going here, so actually, you know, the muscles are going to come in here if I want to be technical, blah, blah, blah. But, so this will be a nipple, and out here, this line, this will be a nipple, and then I carve in from there with this being the sternum, okay? So with that in mind, I'll go ahead and draw the line down here. Right now, again, I want to get the hips figured out before I do this, but I also know myself, and I'll be doing them simultaneously because I want the end goal always to be in my mind. So there. And the other thing to remember is these breasts aren't going to be at the top. They're going to be down here somewhere, okay? So I can pull this line down and put the dot there. Pull this line down. Hopefully I'm doing it down in the right place, and the dot there. And when I'm cutting, I can remember, okay, so this is a nipple, that's a nipple. Those are my outie points. And then I'll need to say, okay, underneath here will be the roundness of the breast. Actually, if this is my sternum's going to go there, but as it curves down, whoops, I hope I'm making sense. My sternum's going to go here. As it curves down, it's got to connect up to the waist and then be in the center of the body here. Does that make sense what I'm saying? So, I'm really frustrated with pencils that don't work, but I love writing with pencils. I should actually get out my kids' chalk at this stage. I can see it better too in the dark. So, the sternum is going to come down, but again, it's a twisting torso, so it's got to meet down into the middle of where the hips are going to be, okay? So as I'm doing that, so I can say a nipple's here, and there's a nipple there, and then right underneath here, I'm going to have the curve of the breast showing. So this is where I can really cut and then start shaping the lower rib cage and connecting it to the body, okay? So I think I'm going to cut for a wee bit, which means putting my camera away so I don't get dust in it. And putting on my safety gear, of course. Eyes, ears, especially mask. I don't care what anybody says about, oh, this stone is inert, doesn't have any silica, or blah, blah, blah. If stone dust gets into your lungs, it doesn't come out. You're reducing your capacity for breathing. Why in the world would anybody do that? So, always protect everything. And of course gloves, because even though my gloves here are relatively thin, there's still going to be a better line of protection against a blade. At least a blade will hit that. It'll alert me that I'm too close, or it'll actually give me protection, or both. So, oh, listen to these birds. And these two boys, my assistants here. Yoda and Etre way in the distance there. Alright, ciao for now. Okay, I want to add this to safety because I really don't want anybody ever getting hurt with this because it's awful. But on your blades, this is the European equivalent of a 4-inch grinder. So you're always going to have, and don't lay your blade down this way, I'm just doing it for a temporary demo on wood, but there's going to be a button here that you use so that when this is spinning, when you're trying to install this piece, you hold this button in and you lock the blade in as you're turning it to really, really tighten it. But you need to make sure, first of all, push the button down and then try to turn your blade and make sure that it's still secure, because you'd be surprised that after working a full day yesterday, the blade may have come undone, except that I have a habit of every time I turn it on, I always check, because seriously the risk is so high that I don't want to. I'd rather take a couple minutes to check the blade. Plus, if I get a habit of doing it all the time, it becomes something that I don't even have to remind myself about. It becomes my habit. And a safety habit's always a good thing. But I want to make sure that this blade is seriously tight on here and that it's not good. Then the second thing, once you know that this blade is still secure on there because you've tried twisting it with this locked and you can't tighten it anymore, okay? Then make sure that this button is loose and that this turns freely, because that will burn out your motor if you try to run this while that button is still locked. Sometimes that button will get full of powder, dust, stone dust, and it won't unlock. And after you test it, you find it gets locked in place. The blade doesn't turn, but the motor's running. So that's a secondary thing. All right, and then also to realize this blade is turning, I think it goes in this way, okay? So when I carve on my stone, let me put that on a side. That's not, I don't like to have this touching anything when I store it. I usually store the blade like this always, okay? I don't want it touching anything. But for right now, I need some space on my table. So when I do the carving on this rock, for example, let's say I wanted to cut this piece here. How do I put it on my bench? Well, in this case, I know that if I hold my tool, I tend to like my tool like this because I hold this with my left hand and I use my right to support the base of the tool. Okay, so I know that the blade is turning this way. It's going away from me, basically. I don't want to shove the powder in my face if I can help it. There's no reason to get dirtier than I have to, and that I will anyway. But I want it to go away from me. So it keeps me cleaner and helps my vision. So I'm going to position this rock. In this case, I put it off of the table here because I didn't want the blade to go cut the table, okay? But I turned this in a way so that I could put my sandbags up here without being in the room of the blade. Now the blade was going to go this way, okay? It's turning blah, 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 and the dust goes away from me, okay? So when I wanted to do this opposite side here, again, I turn it this way and do like that. When I wanted to do this side, I'm not going to just take the blade and go off here. Again, I'm going to twist it around and put it so that the blade is coming away from me. So in a large work that obviously you're not going to move off of your stand, something like that, it's harder to roll it around, then you're not going to have as many choices with that. However, you can change your own body position so that instead of approaching it from the left, you go from the right side of the rock. So it's always a good idea to think about those sorts of things when you can, okay? So right now I'm going to get her propped up on the pieces I cut off yesterday. I'm using as wedges to keep the stone in place because sometimes that works I don't want any movement here. You see, that's a terrible thing to do because that's just asking for trouble. It's dangerous for with a spinning tool that has spinning tool that's going so fast that even if it was made out of you know, another material, it would still cut you. But also, I don't want to have the sculpture jumping around because that's just not going to be a good thing. Okay, so I probably beat that horse to death, but really, keep your body parts. You're going to love them for the rest of your life. Alright, so as I was rounding some corners and stuff with a couple of other tools and things, I realized that I didn't like how straight this torso is from this vantage point. So I decided again to redraw my lines. I'm using blue chalk this time, a great kids chalk for painting on streets, because I don't need the marks to stay. I just need to be able to see them when I'm working. And I also realized as I was turning this, I was getting back to this angle, and I thought, ooh, gosh, that's boring. So I decided to go back here to my sternum, my torso thing, redraw the line, rebalance this again where I get my front going, and then I want to put in the waist here. So if you stand with your body trying to do this position, you'll see that when your torso twists toward your hip, you're going to get a little fold in skins because the skin's going to come out. So this will be coming out on top of the hip. So I can use this as a curve around and put a curve in here. And that's going to be a nice little sort of roundy spot there. And then on this side, because this side is stretching up, I started the thing. You see, I chickened out over here because I wasn't sure how much I wanted to do. But I'm thinking now that to help my brain move forward, because really I don't like this blocky look right here. I've lost the curve of the other profile, so I want to put in this profile. So the rib cage is going down around like this, okay? Here's your sternum. Okay, actually, you're right. I should stay from the one point of view. So here's my sternum here. My rib cage is an egg shape. That's what I've drawn on this side, okay? It's wider at the top and it's tapering as it goes toward the neck, okay? So we call it an egg with the bottom cut off, okay? So there's my rib cage, okay? Right, like that, okay. So I'm going to have a curve coming in. Now the breast lies on top of the rib cage. However, you're still going to kind of have a little tuck in here, and then the breast will come out over that, okay? So I want to have some of this rock and roll put in, and I want to cut away the rock here to give me a feeling of a waist, and that starts giving me some girly things. I may also come down here and cut off some of this leg to again give me some feeling of rock and roll, and also it tells me where the hips are, because as I said, if the pubic bone is here and then the butt cheeks on the backside come here, that's my outie right there. Do you see that? And then I start tapering in with the muscle of the leg. So the vastus lataris is going to be over here, but I can get this curve in it and cut this part off. I don't want this to be too narrow at the base because I'm a little bit worried about, well, it's probably not going to be a problem because I've got two thick legs here. So, but I don't like a narrow base because it's a point where it can snap off, but I don't think I'm going to get to that extreme. So what I want to do now is to come in and cut this away from this particular vantage point, and only this vantage point. If I start turning to go, oh, I want to cut it here, I'm likely to make a mistake and cut something off I don't want removed just yet. Alright, so if I'm honest here, which I generally am, I think I'm approaching this in a very awkward, inefficient way. So I'm going to stand back and go back to it. Now, what I told you before is that I always need the hips in line. But another thing that I've recognized that my brain tells me is if I want to make something smaller and I'm fighting it for some reason, it's often because I need to make the other part smaller relatively, because I can't make the big part smaller because the other part is too big and my brain's going, the proportion's not working, the proportion's not working. Okay, so in this case, look at that. Isn't that terrible? Oh my gosh, I lost all the beauty of the original idea there. So, yeesh. Now, I'm leaving this back natural. Part of that's because I can't work all sides at once, but the other part of it is I like to leave some natural cut in the rock if I can, and I don't have tools to work with granite really, very limited with the ability on this, and so I want to just leave that natural because I don't even know how I could put that texture in if I wanted it there, but mostly I just want to work with the rock as it is. So my thing was, I want to go back to the original idea. So here you can see the original line with the contrapposto. So I had to make the upper part, I had to make this smaller so that I could start to shape these hips, because shaping these hips with a big block on top wasn't working for me. So it's good to recognize what your brain is doing. The other thing is, if you come from this point of view, I wanted a breast right here, okay? I haven't gone in enough to have the breast, and because this is the lower breast, it's got the full weight of it going. So in other words, what I mean is I don't have the depth. Do you see this? I don't have the depth to make this be a nice full brown rounded breast. The breast that's up here is being pulled upward, so it's being elongated, and the fat will follow what the muscle underneath it is doing. So basically what I'm saying is I've got to develop my rib cage here in a way so that I have space to put a breast on top of it. So it could be that she'll be leaning back as well, and that's fine. But that's where I am right now, is I took my chalk, went back up here. Let's see if I can do, this is the rounded torso, the rounded, whoops, sorry, I'm not aiming the video when I talk. Okay, so this is my eggshell for my thorax, what do you call it? My center point. So my sternum's going out this way, okay, and then I get the crossway. There's my spine back in here. So technically that would, again, go in like this. Okay, so, all right, holding that with my right hand. Okay, so then the breasts are going to be the 90 degrees I described to you today. So that this one being stretched meets the sternum. Okay, so what I can see again is that the rib cage is too large. Now I'm making breasts enormous for a torso like that. But so what it tells me really is, okay, so my breast is going to be here. I want the lower part to come here. Let's do this. Whoops, am I doing this well for you? Probably not. Okay. So there's a breast. Now, granted, that's big, but in stone carving, I always want to make the parts big. I don't have any arms to be relating it to, so I still want this to come out as far as I can with that, but I don't necessarily need it to be where your brain goes, oh yeah, that came from a square like that. I tend to, personally, I don't like that. I don't want my brain to fill in what it was before. I want my brain to see the object that is, not the object that was. Does that make sense? So, in effect, to get more gesture in this piece, I want to keep the curve here as much as I possibly can and really emphasize this indent. So this is going to come in. So anything I can do to emphasize cutting in here is going to be better. Maybe I need to move this breast a little more in this direction. Do you see? That's also good because I start having material here, but if I move that in, when I do the fabric covering later, that'll maybe cover here, maybe cover into the breast. I wanted it to cover the nipple or maybe just slightly show, but so this can come in, but I'm a little bit leery of losing my material just yet at this place, although the main thing is I do want to keep that curve in, but I can also round the bum a little bit, so really increase that. But for right now, I'm going to leave this material because it's more important that I get the center of the torso working. So going back here, I start here, and I go, okay, here's my line to the sternum, straight to the end of the rock here, okay, because I may not have this surface later, but right now this is my drawing surface, so I've got to work with that. Now, I'm going to come back around here to this view. This is the center point of my body here. That's the hip and the hip. So I'm going to have, this is the center point. Now the leg's going to overlap, so the leg's going to go over here. It's not a problem. But center point to the crotch line is here. So I want to connect this with this. What I started to do with my diamond blade is to cut a flat plane along this, because this is the high point, and then I curve away from there. It also helps me orient the curve of the torso. And again, I come to the bird's eye view to think, all right, this, let's see if I can put the video for you here. If this is the front of my body in this plane, and I need to round out. Now, if I don't have room to round, you see I probably cut too much there. Maybe that was the end of the rock, I don't remember. But if I don't have this round, then fine. Push the torso back, give it a little bit more curve, arching back, that's fine. That's a good direction to go. And then pull this back, because this is my plane, but look at this weird little chunk that I've got there. Push it back, start to connect that up to this. Make a nice torso shape here, okay? Start with the egg shape. Again, I don't need to get too many details. I don't need to put in the arch at this time, but it's a nice idea to remember that up here it's going to be shallower, because elongating the body does tend to make you see a little bit of the rib. However, again, I don't want to put that much information into this piece, because when you have a rock that has a lot of pattern to it, you want to show off the beauty of the stone itself, not all these lolly, wonderful things you can do with anatomy. Also, I may imply it, but it's going to be a subtle kind of thing. And if you show too much of the rib cage poking through, you make the figure look like she's starving, and that's not really a sexy quality. So again, the whole point of doing a torso is to make an object of pleasure, of desire, of beauty, and sticks aren't really pretty as much as curves are. So you want to balance the architecture with the romance, okay? The architecture being your straight lines and the romance being your curves. So anyway, right now I'm just trying to put in the structure, and I'm thinking a lot of the skeleton, and but still keeping in the back of my mind this motion that I want to have, okay? So, another point to quality, because I'm carving a female torso, you're always better off to err on the side of making the top narrow and the hips big, because that's the quality of femaleness. So if I were making the man's torso, I'd be wanting to not lose it here and definitely lose it down here. So those are qualities that also you think of as, are you trying to do masculine, feminine? What's the energy that you're trying to exhibit? It doesn't matter. I mean, if I'm carving a male figure, I can still make him look feminine. That's not my point at all. My point is, what is the energy you're trying to do? And for that, and there are certain qualities that we have associated with those things. So anyway, I can see from this straight-on point of view here, I've got a disaster of a torso. Do you see that? So I need to also remember that this plane for the torso is coming this way. It's coming this way, because the waist has no bone to it. You have the thoracic arch, the rib cage that controls the spine there. You don't get a lot of movement in the spine because it's got all those bones connected. The hip is the same way. So we turn dramatically at our waist where we have no bone structures wrapping around it. Same way we do with our neck. You have the head controlling the spine. You have the rib cage controlling spine. The neck's flexible, the lower back's flexible. That's why we injure those spaces more often. So with that in mind, the torso going up like this, I'm going to start shaping this now and not paying attention to everything else, because really that's got to work first. Okay? So see you when I get back. Ciao.